Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming back and joining us for another recording of our podcast. This is Delancey, the one that very rarely does intros because I don't like it. But Melena said that I could, so I am. Because honestly, tonight, it's really exciting. This is super exciting for us. We are going to have a guest on tonight. Her name is Deni, and she's actually a listener to our show. That's how we found her. Well, she found us. She found us,
Yes.
and then we found her, and now we found each other. And so now we're here together, and we're gonna hear her story. She has a great story, and yeah, Diddy, take it away.
Okay. So I am an adoptive mom. I have four kids. My first child is biological. We had infertility issues. It took us 5 years to have our first child. So after about 3 years into our fertility issues, we had two miscarriages, and we just really felt like the Lord was leading us to adoption. So we tried to adopt, and a friend of ours who's an OBGYN connected us with a girl who came into her office saying she wanted to place her baby for adoption. I was blogging at the time, and I don't know, it was just this real, like, we felt like this whole kismet kind of thing, like, was just too good to be true. And so we met her. We went along with this whole process. There were some weird things, and towards the very end, we found I'm like a super sleuth. Like, I will research you as much as I can humanly possible. And so I found maternity pictures, and a baby registry on, and she basically just lied and said that the birth father wasn't fully on board, and so she was just doing that to make him and his family happy. And I was like, do you feel like we should kind of like cut bait here, like? And he was like, no, it'll be fine, I think it's going to be fine, she seems sincere, blah blah blah. Well, keep going a little bit longer, and she goes and delivers the baby at a different hospital with a different doctor. And we find out, and Lancey's face makes me happy. And so, like, our friend, her doctor was my friend, and I call her and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, I don't know. But so then we were paying for her phone at the time. So I'm like, check all the phone records. She's been seeing this doctor for a couple of months, which means she's seen two doctors at one time, which is actually like a federal offense because she was on Medicaid, and like, you can't do that. Okay. And so that obviously it didn't end well. She says that she decided to parent, which as heartbreaking as that would be for me as an adoptive mother, like, I support a birth mother's choice literally forever and ever. It's part of the reason that I like want to make sure that my children get to see their parents always. Like, that's just something that's very important to me. But we just knew that wasn't exactly what was going on. So devastated. And about a week later, we we turned her in, like, to the police because it's fraud. So about a week or two after this all like kind of came crashing down, he contacted me and he was like, hey, are you sitting down? And I was like, no. And he goes, you might want to. And I was like, what? So I did. And he said, yeah. So apparently this isn't the first time she's done this to someone. So she's like a serial criminal. She was like, she has a rap sheet miles and miles long. Yes,
I
Delancey.
have a question. How many times did they give you a number? Because I feel like there has to be a number, and it probably isn't even like the full number.
Well, the only one that they had proof of was just one prior, like with her previous pregnancy. But we have kind of just from hearing from other people, we feel like maybe she did it to like multiple families with each pregnancy. So like multiple people thought they were adopting her baby. So yeah. So that was not pleasant. And after that, I was like, yeah, we're not going to do that again. Like, I am not going to put like this whole thing into someone else's hands where I just kind of have to like
Mhm.
hope that they do the right thing. Because that's totally different than a birth mom changing her mind. Like, this was truly criminal. She was like, she had like a whole spiel and a whole, like, it was a thing. Funny story is that my son's birth mother knows her and is like, no, she's a bad human. Yeah. So
that's crazy.
So we decided after that, like, we're not going to pursue adoption again for maybe ever. And we did IVF, and we had my daughter, and she that was just like a really wonderful healing experience, obviously, after 5 years of infertility. So she's super amazing and special and wonderful. But then obviously we wanted more kids. So we had frozen embryos with her, and we decided to try using them, and none of them worked. That was multiple processes. And then actually the attorney that we used with the scam situation called us. He had called me 2 or 3 other times, but he called me this time. It was his assistant, and she called me and she was like, hey, we have a birth mother, and this is the whole scenario. And, you know, she asked us to find a family, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, every other time that they had called, I was like, yeah, no, thanks. Sounds very much like the last situation. I'm a pass. And don't call my friends, because I had a lot of people in the infertility community that I was friends with. And so I would go into a group that was like local to us and be like, hey, FYI, like, you know, keep your antenna up if you decide to go for something like this.
Right.
So anyway, this time, like, it was just straight, it was all God, because I was like, can I call you? You know, I need to talk to Sean, and I'll call you later. And I called him, and he's like my barometer. So, you know, I'll be like, yes, let's do this fun thing. And he's like, bring it down. And he was like, yeah, I think that we might could do this. And I was like, what? So she was whenever we were contacted, she was 30 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
So like we had 10 weeks. We didn't have a home study done. Like we had nothing. We had to like, wah! And like get it all done. And we did. We got it all done. It should have been really easy and smooth afterwards. And it was not, due to a lot of like extenuating circumstances. One of them being that attorney, though thankfully we were relieved of his services and ended up with a different attorney. Like the story with that, I'm gonna briefly try to tell this story because it's such a good story, such a God thing. So basically what happened is that first attorney quit. And in the state of Louisiana, you can't represent the birth mother and the adoptive mother. And I think that there was some real, you know, like it was real gray how he was doing this. So I think he recused himself so that he could like not end up in some trouble. So we ended up, we needed an attorney, but we didn't know who to use. And at this point, we didn't trust very many.
Right.
So, so my husband had this patient, and this just hysterical, wonderful older gentleman, and he would come in, and Sean would be like, I think he's going to pass. Like, it's not looking good. And his daughters would come in and they would pray over him. And like, so Sean would leave and be like, he's probably not going to be there when I come back in the morning. And he would come back in the morning, and this gentleman would be like sitting up, like chatting. And my husband's like, what is going on here? His daughters are like, prayer. That's what we do. We pray. So he had come into the hospital like 3 times. So this last time, my husband's like, no way. Like, he's not going to make it. Tells me at home, he's like, he's back. He's doing really poorly. I knew one of the daughters, like from an old job. So anyway, he says, you know, I'm going in, I'm going to talk to them. He texts me from work, and he says, you are not going to believe that I got to work and Mr. So-and-so was sitting up in the bed talking. And Sean's like, what is happening? And his daughters were like, it's prayer. That's what we do. We pray. And they were like, do you have anything that we can pray for? No, he said, well, y'all's prayers are super powerful. Maybe I need you to get you to pray for me. And they were like, sure. Do you have anything you need prayer for? And he was like, I don't know why I said it, but I was like, yeah, my wife and I are going through this really hard like issue with our adoption, and we need a good attorney. And she goes, what? You know, my best friend that comes up here to visit all the time is an adoption attorney.
What?
Yes. So we end up getting connected with him. We meet him,
Wow.
start working with him, and then like I think like a week later, that gentleman passed.
Wow.
Like he was like there, he was there for that reason. It was just
Wow.
my son's story is the most beautiful story on the planet. Like it really is. So he ends up going through the whole thing with us. It is a very long, drawn out situation. We ended up having a really beautiful moment in the court with his birth mother, who we had not met because of the previous attorney. My tip that I give every mother on the planet: follow your gut. Like whatever happens in the world, follow your gut. And I wanted to go and meet her so badly, and he was like, "No, you don't want to do that. That's not a good idea. It's not going to go well. Blah blah blah." And if I think things would have gone very differently had I done that, because she and I have met and we've talked and we get along super well. And we've discussed, like he gave us some really bad advice. We wish we hadn't listened to him. But she was in the court that day and she had an attorney, and her attorney had gone in and talked to her. And we were there to try to terminate her parental rights. And I can't give away too many details because that's not my story to tell. But we were trying to get her parental rights terminated, and so we're all in the courtroom, like waiting for this like hearing that we're going to have to like talk and testify, which is awkward and terrible, because it just wasn't the way we wanted it to work out, obviously. So we didn't want to have to do that. That wasn't how we wanted it to, So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden the judge says, "Hey, I'm going to need y'all to all step out for a minute, and then I'll call you back in." And our attorney was like, "That's really weird. Like this doesn't happen." So I left, and then they called us back in, and the judge said, she's spoken to her attorney. Her attorney has spoken to me. We've spoken together, and she would like to sign over her parental rights, because whenever the attorney came in and visited her last night, he was reading scripture with her, and she feels very convicted that God has him where he's supposed to be, and she would not want anything to mess up where he is and what he's, the situation that he's in, and take him away from a family that loves him like y'all do. Wow. And then we got to hug and talk for a few minutes. Like it was wonderful. It didn't all end there. It still took us a while to finalize his adoption, but in the end, it was all wonderful. So we lost contact with her for a while, and ended up regaining contact with her. January, like the end of January was 1 year. And I don't know, I had messaged her the April before. I messaged her Easter so I guess that was 2022. So the Easter of 2021, I had messaged her on Facebook, like, "Hey, he's asking questions. I would like for y'all to be able to have a relationship, hope you're interested, like whatever." And I didn't hear like April to January. It's a long time. So, and she just like randomly messaged me back one day and was like, "Hey, I just saw this," because we weren't friends on Facebook. So, those things just like filter.
Yeah.
So she found it and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like this makes me so happy." And so we ended up meeting her for lunch. It was literally like a year or two later. Went to lunch and we're there for like 3 hours, like just visited. And since then, she and I have visited a ton of times. We've met up with her multiple times. I send her pictures all the time. She texts me stuff. We've become friends. Like we have it's funny because we do have similar personalities. Like
That's amazing.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I love her. I love her. And then a couple of weeks ago, so let's see, last summer, my two oldest kids were were baptized. And she came to baptism for the two older kids. So she got to see him be baptized.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's pretty great. That's really amazing.
It was so special. It really was. It was just so special. And her oldest child came with her. So he got to meet his oldest sister.
Oh, cool.
And then about 3 weeks ago, two of his brothers came to his soccer game. So her oldest daughter, and two of her sons came. So it was her and three of his siblings and us. Like it was just like this whole, and then we all went to lunch together. It was super, it was just a super fun. I don't know. It's like such a hard thing to explain, like how you want to share those things. Like I wish that everyone wanted to share them. I know that everyone doesn't, but for me and for my heart, getting to see all of them interact together, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just like the most beautiful thing. It makes him really emotional afterwards. He has a hard time. He's 8, so he has a hard time processing all that. But I am such a firm believer in open adoption. I just think that there's no reason why you shouldn't have that. And people say, like, if they're safe, and that's where I like listen to Raquel a lot, where she's like, if they're safe, but like, are you determining what's safe, or is God determining what's safe? Like, there's ways to let people in their lives, even if you don't think they're doing exactly what you want them to do, if that makes sense.
Right.
So then we wanted to have more kids after that. I don't, sometimes I think I'm totally crazy now that we have 4. But we decided, but I was all about, like, we're not going through an adoption again. Like, scam, Bella, my sons took us like 2 years to finalize. Like, it was just too much. So we decided we would do IVF again. We did IVF. And before we ever finalized his adoption, I was in a Bible study, and God was like, you're going to have another baby, and it's going to be a girl, and you're going to give her this name. And I was like, okay. So I go home and tell Sean, and my husband's like, he's used to these kind of things for me. He's like, okay, like, we'll see what happens. So we decided to do an IVF, and like, of course, we're like, this is a girl, right? Y'all, the night before we went in for our ultrasound to find out what the baby was, I felt like God said to me, don't be disappointed if it's a boy. And I was like, but it will be. Like, what? I can't, this is not a gender fluid name. This is a very much a girl name. And so I was like, okay. So we go in, and they like do the ultrasound, and I was like, that's a boy. Like, immediately. That's a boy. And my husband's like, oh. So we had a lot of really fun conversations in there. So we had my son, so he's our 3rd. And after that, we had 2 more frozen embryos, which we were not expecting. So we're like, oh, great, that's our girl, So in the end of 2019, we did a frozen embryo transfer. I got pregnant, which I had never gotten pregnant before from a frozen embryo transfer. So I was like, no way this is going to work. Like, whatever. I went and took a test. They were like, it's positive. And I was like, what? Because we really had gotten to the point where we were like totally settled with, like, we have 3 kids. We're perfectly happy. Like, it's a little trio of perfection. And then then we got really excited. We're like, okay, well, this is our girl, and we're going to be a family of 6. And this is so fun and so exciting. And Cal, of course, is like, I want a sister. I want a sister. And we're like, you can't actually order those things, but come on. But went in for my 10-week ultrasound, and there was no heartbeat. So like, 3rd miscarriage. The other 2 had been before I had kids. And there's just a little more space for, like, grieving when you don't have kids. So when you do have kids, you have to keep on going on with your life.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Really hard. And but I was just, at this point, Sean and I talked about it, and I was like, I can't, like, my body cannot do this anymore. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot on your body. It's a lot emotionally. So we were just kind of like, okay, well, I guess we're done. Like, I guess we're done. But it felt so not right. Like, nothing about it felt right. So we kind of sat on it for a while, and my oldest was like, why don't we adopt? Like, we've already done that. It's fun. It's great. Let's do it. And I was like, absolutely not. Girl. I was like, girl, you have no idea all that goes into this. You have no idea. Like, you were not really privy to the terrible that these processes can be. So I was absolutely not on that. And my husband was like, oh, maybe we could do that. And I was like, you literally do drugs in your spare time or something? I don't know. We're not doing that. Like, absolutely not. No. But, like, she kept on. She was not giving it up. She's pretty persistent. I also think she really has the gift of discernment. Like, she just picks up things that other kids do not. And it is really, truly beautiful. So God started working on my heart, and he worked and worked and worked. And finally, one day I was like, okay, let's do this. So we started all over again, new home study, new all that stuff. And we decided to go with an adoption consulting group. And we were with them for almost 2 years. It was, yeah, I don't know. But my friend had also given me the information of a private attorney in Florida. And so I had, like, he sends out just a list of potential birth mothers. And if you would like to present to them, then you apply for that case. Okay. So we had applied with him before. We had applied 20 times with our consulting group. Like, we're 2 years into this. I'm like crying all the time. And I'm ready to give up. And I'm like, all right, God, I'm like real done with this. It was time to renew our contract with them again if we were going to stay with them. I didn't have any peace about that. So we applied for this case. And like, as people apply, he sends out to his email, like, how many people have applied? And he's like, we had applied, the first one we ever applied to, 120 people applied.
Wow.
Yeah. So imagine being a birth mother, like sifting through all of that. So anyway, so then there's other ones where there's like 15 or 20, like whatever. So I'm like, basically Hail Mary, apply for this case. And 75 people applied. And I was like, not a chance. We're older. We have 3 kids already. We homeschool. Some people think that's weird, like, so I throw all these things out there. I'm just like totally a no. So, and it's like, it was like early September was when it was due. Then she has a certain amount of time to decide. Well, then she like asked for more time. And then she asked for more time. And I'm like, oh, there's no way. Like, there's no way we're getting picked out of all these people. Right. Well, then the attorney emails all of us and he's like, there's 8 couples. And we were one of the 8 couples. And I was like, what? So he sends out like the demographics. So like, like the nationality and stuff of the birth mother, like, all that information. And the birth father, if they know, like, they tell you these kind of things. So he sends out the demographics of the other couples. Well, we are whitey white people. Okay. And our daughter is half Hispanic. So we knew she was going to be half Hispanic. And there was multiple other couples who at least one of them was Hispanic. So gotcha. I was like, again, no way. There's no way. And so it got down to a couple of couples that she wanted to Zoom with, which is not typical, but she asked for it and he was like, of course. So we Zoomed with her and we're like, okay. So then he emails again. He's like, I'm sorry. She's asked for more time and she wants to Zoom with another couple. So I'm like, she's not picking us. If she liked us, she would have already picked us. Like, right. We are done. Mm-hmm. So I actually, when he like emailed and said she wanted to Zoom another couple, I'm in my car in the Drug Emporium parking lot, sobbing hysterically, like, we're done. This is over. We're going to have 3 kids. I'm going to come to terms with it. It's going to be fine. God give me peace, all these things. And he said, so you probably won't know anything. I think this was a Friday. You probably won't know anything until early next week. Like 2 hours later, he calls and he's like, hey, are you still interested? Because she chose you.
Wow.
And I was like,
wow.
What did you say? He was like, yeah, she picked y'all. And he says, I really didn't think that was going to happen.
At least he's honest. At least he's honest with it. It's like us too. Same, bro. Same. Right? Same.
Well, I've been over here crying, dude. Like, this was over. I'm totally like, whatever. So, so we set up and Zoomed with her like a couple of days later with our kids so that she could meet all the kids too. We're just like totally, that was in September. She was due in December. And so we just texted back and forth like the whole time. And it's just, I don't know. There's just something nice about that too. Like, we didn't have any contact with my son's birth mother beforehand. So there was no like getting to know anything. There was no asking questions. There was none of that. And he was 7 by the time we had contact with her again. So that was just, I don't know, some years that we lost there that make me sad. Yeah. And so this has been like a very fun, like, just super. And I told her like from the get-go, I was like, listen, I might act a little crazy, but like, we went through a scam one time and like, we've been through it. And so please if I ask you certain questions, don't think that I'm like questioning you. I probably just need some reassurance. And she was like, no, I don't think that that's what you're doing, but I'm totally set on this. Like, I am 100%, I'm good. There were a couple of little things along the way that were kind of, her mom really did not want her place. And she lives with her mom. We love her mom. Like, we love them all. It's her mom and her daughter. And so we ended up going, she texted and said that she was going into labor basically, but then she went to the hospital and they're like, no, you're not. And they sent her home. So this was a Saturday night. And the next morning I'm walking out the door by myself to go to church because maybe one of the kids wasn't feeling great or something. And I was like, I'm going to church by myself. Like, I really need Jesus. I need some time, whatever. And
I feel that.
yes. And so I'm like dressed, and I think I actually had on heels, which is like a never. And she texts me and she's like, yeah, I'm at the hospital. And I swear she said I'm 6 centimeters. And I was like, what? Wait, what? We live 12 hours away.
Wow.
We were driving because we have 3 kids and I wanted my kids there. Like, I didn't care if she changed her mind. Like, that was our thing. Like, we wanted our kids to experience all of it with us because it's a life lesson no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So we drive all the way there. We left at like noon. We got there at 2:30 in the morning, all of us. And she had the baby at like 2:30 in the afternoon, sent us a picture. And she was like, you can come when you get here. And I was like, it's 2:30 in the morning. my kids are like, I don't know, for some reason, most of them didn't want to go to sleep until it was ridiculous. It was a whole thing. So the next morning we get up and we're like, okay, well, we're all going to go to the hospital. And my attorney calls and he's like, how about if just you go? He was like, that's kind of a lot. And I was like, we are a lot. All of us, like this personality, all of us have it. And so I was like, okay. So my husband was like, you just go. And I went and I walked in. Her mom is Filipina. She's so adorable. We just love them all so much. They're so sweet. And we walk in and her mom is like, so like hugs me. She starts crying and she was like, I really don't want her to do this. And I was like, okay. And she was like, but she is very set. Like, she has talked to y'all. She loves y'all. She thinks that this is the right decision. So I'm going to support her in whatever she wants to do. But I don't want you to do this. I don't want her to do this. And I was like, that is fair. Like, your feelings are valid. Like, I get it. I would not want her to either, but for us, like, this is not the end of it, Mm-hmm. So we text, we send pictures. Of course, we got to meet the baby. She's literally the cutest thing on the planet. And I mean, maybe I'm biased. I don't know. I thought all of my kids were the cutest things on the planet when they were born, but she really is like extra cute. And she is like a head full of hair. So everywhere we go, people are like, look at her hair. Like, she gets so tired of that. But, yeah, that I told her afterwards, like once we were there with her, she asked me to be a witness for her to like sign over her rights, which was intense because I had to listen to like everything the attorney listed off her. So she had me and her mom in there, and it's just like, and I heard people say it before, but like, it is so hard for one of the best days of your life to be one of the hardest of theirs.
Yeah.
She was so resolute. She was like her mom was saying, she was like rolling her eyes, like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Like, she's just a really solid, like, wonderful person. And that was heartbreaking. It really was. But I was also very honored that like she wanted me there and she included me so much of this. It was truly just beautiful. So afterwards, so what you do is you leave the hospital once you have permission to or whatever. We took her, and you can't leave the state that you're in until you're cleared by both states. So our home state and the state of Florida both had to clear us. It's called ICPC. So we had to wait for that. But we were all the way like on the very far east coast of Florida. So we drove over to the Pensacola area to wait out our ICPC because it was like halfway to home. So that made it less of a drive. So when we were there, I just texted her and I was like, there's nothing that I can ever say to you to thank you, because you healed all the things that hurt us from adoption previously. Like, you made this the most beautiful, easy, wonderful gift of an experience. Like, what people say adoption is that we had never been able to experience, you made it that for us. So it was truly just like this unbelievable healing experience for us.
Right.
I'm sure that it was not that wonderful for her.
Right.
But I was trying my best to be as supportive as I could, you know. I kept asking her, like, I send her pictures constantly, and I'm like, do you want me to send you pictures all the time? Would you like me to put them somewhere where you can look just when you feel like it? And she's like, nope, send them to me all the time, whatever. And I know Raquel and some other people have posted like birth mom support groups, and I've sent her those too. And I'm like, you can tell me to buzz off. Like, I'm totally fine if you tell me to buzz off, but as long as you don't tell me to buzz off, I'm going to keep trying.
Right.
We want you happy and healthy. Like, we want you to be the best that you can be. So yeah. And we're going there. We leave on the 17th. We're going there. Going to go visit her and
That's
her
what you
mom.
said.
Yeah. So we're
That's
super
so cool.
And my kids are too. They're like, yes, we get to go see Miss T. And I was like, absolutely. You know,
I love that.
Yeah.
I
think that my daughter gets the most excited about hanging out with the birth families. Like, she's like all about this life. She like loves everybody. She just is 100%. She's jealous that her brother has more siblings than she does.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I think that shows like your character. Like the way that you are, it bleeds onto your kids. I mean, I know that for a fact, being a mom, and holy cow, they see nothing but love from you. Like, and you can see that. Like, if you guys aren't watching YouTube and you can only like hear her voice on the podcast, like, you need to watch YouTube, because just looking at her, she's just somebody that radiates that. And like her talking about it too, like, just, oh my gosh, like, we need more like you.
Oh no,
Like,
100%. And not just that, but I think they should be able to. I mean, she's been smiling this whole time.
yeah.
Like, they're gonna have to hear like her smile and how like her eyes. I mean, I know you caught it too. Her eyes light up. Like,
Yes.
it just you do radiate the positivity, the love, the everything. And because I know Melena and I have experienced people who do not radiate positivity and love, and it does come out of their children. It really does. There is that rare moment where there's the black sheep that is like, all rainbows and butterflies in a sea of misery. However, that's not always the case. So the fact that you're setting that example and setting that tone, you and your husband both are, that's
love it.
awesome. I love that.
I appreciate that. That's why, like, I started listening to y'all because Raquel posted something, and I was like, they're so fun. They're so happy. They're so positive. And I mean, there's no discounting how hard any of this is, because there's every bit of it. But it's also just, there is so much beauty. I think God can use every hard thing and every bad thing. He can use it for good. If we let him, like, we can let him, we can let Satan use it for bad, or we can let God use it for good and channel it that way. It is really wonderful I know for my kids, and I know listening to other adult adoptees, like, not knowing health stuff. Or like from y'all's history or whatever. So my daughter she's got a lazy eye. And I texted her birth mom, and I'm like, hey, and she's like, yep, I have that. And so she was like, I'm so glad you caught it early. So we took her to the doctor today. So that was we had a very exciting day today of going to the doctor where they dilate the infant's eyes. And then
sounds like a good time.
Yeah, not a good time. And then we came home to the toilet overflowing from one of the children's bathrooms. I won't name which one it was, but like, mom and 4 kids is awesome.
Kids, yay, right?
Yeah.
Ant life. I don't have to worry about that. Pocket's not going to overflow a toilet. Thank you, Pocket. That's a full day. That's a full day for sure.
It was a full day. Yeah.
Okay, I have some questions. I had to write them down because I didn't want to interrupt you.
All right.
No, don't be. The ICPC. I've never heard of that before. And I know Delancey, because me and her were both kind of like, wait, what?
We both went, huh?
Do you know, like, is that how it is across every single state? Like all of it? Really?
So if because adoption laws are state specific,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
So that adoption laws are state specific. There's not like a nationwide adoption laws. Like each state has different laws.
Right.
So different ones have different laws on how long after birth a mother can sign her rights away. And then there's also like some of them they can sign, but they have a revocation period of, 5 days, 10 days, 30 days, like where they can go back and change their mind. So every state has different laws. So since every state has different laws, that is what I understand is why they have ICPC. It's the Interstate Compact Protection of Children, I think.
Okay.
Don't quote me for certain, but it's something like that. But it's so that both states check that you are covering both of their laws.
Okay. No,
that
that's good to know.
And so that you can't just like grab one from somewhere and run over here and be like, I got it, we're good.
I mean, there are people out there that would do that. So, but who checks? Is it like we trusting the government, like an agency for the government to check?
We're trusting the government.
Awesome, love that. Cool. Love that.
So like,
okay. The agency or attorney like checks the things and sends it to the government to check the things.
So okay.
The old faces are the same way I feel.
Yeah,
but I didn't know that. I did learn something new. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
because I had no clue on that.
Idea.
Like we knew that laws were different in each like state because we've kind of gone over it, but I didn't know that. So I love that. Always learn something new.
A good
I guess it makes sense though that they do that they check since they are different.
So one of my tips that I give people when they call me and ask me about adopting is to buy The Idiot's Guide to Adoption, which sounds so silly, but it has a chart by state and goes over the differences in the laws from each state.
What? That's so good. And it's like one of those idiot books, one of those actual idiot books like
literally,
that okay.
Yeah.
No, because I know they have them for different things. So that's really good to know. Okay. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. Because if you're with someone like we were with a consulting agency, you could match really in any state. So if you match with someone, you'd like to know what their laws are, because the laws are
true.
So yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Like seriously, that's good advice. I love that.
That's so wild. And my brain has just put that into such like a simplistic thing that I don't want to say it out loud. Because if I say it out loud, people are gonna be like canceled. But it's almost like I'll say it anyway. It's almost like a silent auction in a way.
Yeah. No,
the way
it's true. It's so true.
The way feels like a silent auction. Yeah. Because you're like 100 and I think you said like 150 or 120 were for like one. And then like somebody else was like 75. And then it just kind of goes like, so I do have a question about that really quick. I'm so sorry, Melina. I'm like inserting myself over your questions really quick.
No, I don't care.
What information do you get to decide who you want to?
So it really depends on like the attorney or the agency that they're working with as to how much information that person gives you. So our attorney gave us, we knew her age, we knew her history, we knew her ethnicity, we knew the little bit that she gave about the birth father's ethnicity and age. Like you can know their height and weight. When we were with the consulting agency, we would get pictures of some of them. But doesn't do that.
Okay.
Sorry, Mom. So, it's basic information, but you will get you can get drug and alcohol history. You can get if they've placed before. You can get a health history. It's kind of also like up to what the birth mother shares, So it can be, some of it can be
a criminal background check.
Well, okay. So it would have been helpful that first time, right? Because we'd have been like, this girl's crazy.
Yes. Red flags. This is where they're made.
So I don't think that is actually part of it. that is one of the things that's like important to be with an established like agency or attorney who like does this a lot, because they're used to talking to these people and they can pick up red flags really easily. And that's one of, you know, there were not red flags with our birth mother. So I want to put that out there before I say this. But our attorney did say that sometimes he'll have a girl come in and he like immediately shares their case. And our birth mother was not as solid on her decision initially. So he waited for a while to share her case until he felt like she was more solid in her decision, which was really helpful for us.
Yeah.
So the current birth mother.
Yeah, our daughters.
Okay, I was just for whatever reason I was like I just keep reverting back to I'm like I don't have a dog in this fight, and my feelings really do not have anything to do with anything. But like I'm just so annoyed with her, the first one. Like I'm so annoyed with her. Like how like it's just really like you, and I love how you said this wasn't a case of her changing her mind.
Right.
Because you know, some people would, you know, the anti-adoption trend right now is like unification, only stay with family, yada yada yada. That's one thing. If you change your mind, I hear you. That's fine. I get it. But to go out and blatantly
Scam
try
someone.
to deceive people, scam them, it's kind of like we already have people calling us, telling us that somebody hacked into our computer and we have to pay you like $900 in iTunes gift cards in order to get it back. I don't need you doing this with children too. Like, get over yourself. Stop doing that. It's not okay.
Well, it really,
Well, you know.
it really hurts other birth mothers too. Like it
It
really,
really
does.
does.
Oh,
People
for sure.
It really
so yeah,
does.
she's not goodness. I actually ran into her in public one time, like a few years later.
Did you say anything? What happened?
With your kids?
You know, I said,
Did you have your kids
What'd you
with you?
say?
My daughter was with me. I was with a friend and her daughter, and I was like, "Can you?" She was walking right beside me. And I was like, "Hey," and she knew like this was a good friend. She knew, and I was like, "Hey, that right back there is that girl, and I'm gonna say something because guess what, y'all? She was pregnant again."
Of course. Of course.
So my friend walked the girls off, and I turned around and I said, "She was with her scammy mom, who they kind of have like a thing that they like run scams." And I turned around and I said, "Hey, so and so," and I said, "So are you scamming someone with this pregnancy too?" I'm not as confrontational as I was then, but she and her mom both were both like, "Who are you? Who are you? What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, please don't tell me you don't know who I am, because I know you know who I am." And then her mom started cussing at me.
Of course.
It was ugly. It was ugly.
It's good for you though for saying something and for calling her out on poor behavior. You know, as despite what other people think about Christians, we are not supposed to be doormats. We're supposed to hold other people accountable. So
Okay, here's
for you.
something like I want to say is how people say blood's supposed to stay with blood. Look at that mom and daughter. Look exactly like what that mom has like exampled for that daughter, because blood has stayed with blood. Like, and I'm not saying she should have been placed for adoption, but like, I mean, I'm sorry,
Look at
but
they're
there is
perpetuating.
shitty parents out there that have blood children, and then unfortunately, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying, but like, so for people to be like, "Oh, blood should be with blood," it's like, no, screw that shit. Look at that example. Like that mom has had some real, I don't know what go on in her life to be the way she is, and then she trickled it down to her daughter. Like, oh my gosh, I can't even. Like, holy cow.
I'm surprised that she hasn't ended up in like, because you said it was a criminal offense. It was a felony for her to do that because it's fraud.
Well, so it's a felony to defraud Medicaid, which they never ended up charging her on. And then they ended up dropping her case from us through the DA's office because they kept continuing it over and over and over again. And eventually it got dropped. So the reason she went to
that DA needs to be voted out. I'm just saying.
I'm not going to talk about the DA.
I'll say it for you. That DA needs to be voted out. I'll say it for you. Bye.
So she never actually got in trouble for either times that she defrauded someone on this. She was on probation when this happened. So they picked her up whenever we reported her because that was a probation violation.
No.
Our legal system sucks so much. on certain things, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Like I can't wrap my head around that, because my whole entire thing is that you would think the legal system would be all about that. Like they would be like jumping all over it to like hold things accountable, because people, society always wants to talk about foster care and, all of the adoption and like all of these other things and how you shouldn't defraud the government, blah, blah. But if we don't have people in place to hold them accountable when they're being terrible human beings,
Exactly.
they really don't have a leg to stand on. So yeah, I don't like them.
No.
I don't live there, but I don't like them.
Okay, here's another question I had, because I can't even fathom this. So you said they were like her lawyer with your birth mom now, with the one birth mom, listing stuff off about her. Were these things that like, quote unquote, she wasn't qualified for, hence why she was placing the baby up for adoption? Like, is that what like he was ticking off? Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
No. He was just literal information about her. Like,
okay.
And it was all, and she knows, like, he doesn't give out information that she doesn't approve of.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like, it's information just about them and what, like what their occupation is and what their education level was and like what they enjoy, like some of them will list like what they enjoyed doing, like they were a cheerleader. Yeah, no, it's not.
It's like a dating profile, but for families and adoption. I mean, if you think about it, you're listing out your likes and your dislikes
and we do the same thing. We send to her all of our, like she had already gotten from us, like the number of kids we have, the number of animals we have, what we do for a living, what kind of hobbies we like.
Was it like a form? Did you have to fill out like a form?
Yeah, for him, the way that he does it is that you send in, it's like an application where you fill out this information, and it tells like, just all your personal information that you are sharing, and then you can like write up a little blurb about yourself and send a couple of pictures. So
I think the worst of that. Could you imagine? Did you or your husband write it, or was it a collaboration? Yeah. Figured.
Men do not care about these things. He was like, okay, that sounds good. I did make him help me decide which pictures we would mail in, but like otherwise, like, no, he's not about that life. He's like, okay.
That's too funny. No, I love that. Okay, good. Because I was like a little disconcerted. I was like, that would be horrible to be like sat down and be like, okay, this is why X, Y, and Z. So I just wanted to make sure on that. I'm like, that would be horrible.
But it might say, if she has a reason why she wants to place, it might say that, like that she's letting, but that's, again, it's all information coming from her, approved by her. They can't share things that, that she says is not okay. There was some personal stuff shared from hers. And I was like, does she know that we know this? And he was like, yes, 1000%.
That's crazy.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty great that they're pretty open about it.
No,
yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It still blows my mind how many people like apply for a child. Like Delancey said, it was perfect wording, but that just blows my mind. Like I had no clue.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it was like that. However, I know that there's like, I've heard stories about birth moms being handed binders with people who want to adopt in it, and it has like their bio. Like I know someone who they had to, the paperwork they submitted to adopt their twins was like that thick. And it was a literal, like they put together a little binder that had like family portraits, letters of recommendation,
all
like
of that.
Everything about their lives. And it just,
you have to do that. You have to submit health reports, you have to do a background check, you have to do a local background check and a federal background check.
I mean, I guess I don't know why I'm acting all shocked. Like that makes sense. I just don't understand how like we have like you have to go through all of that, which is probably more extensive than the pre-approved TSA checklist.
Oh, for real.
Adopt a child. I mean, 1,000%. So expensive. I mean, it's just so much more extensive than that. But then you have, sorry everybody for about the way I'm saying this, but then you're gonna have two yahoos and you're over here just having like 6 kids and it's totally okay.
Right.
No, it's so true. Because I agree.
Like I don't under like
Things that
the
we will never understand in life.
Yeah.
definitely top of the list for
Yeah.
sure. Definitely top of the list.
Yeah.
That's crazy. No. And I love that. So both adoptions are open, right?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Which
I
is
do
really great.
too.
So it took us 2 years, to match and end up with our daughter, which seemed really terrible at the time. But when you look back on it, you realize like what God is doing and because one of my biggest concerns with us adopting again was that his was closed. And I was like, if we adopt again and hers ends up being open, then that could really be hard. Like it could really, and so God was opening that door. Like he knew what the concerns were in my heart. He knew where we really wanted, what we really wanted. And he made that happen. Like he made that happen. And
Awesome.
then we've never had to worry about that. It's never been an issue. He's like, yeah, this is my birth family and that's her birth family. And this is, it's just, God is good with all the things.
See, I love that. Refreshing. So refreshing. Because I don't know. I was talking to my cousin today just about how I can't fathom not believing in some type of higher power. Like I can't fathom that. So I think it's great. I love it so much.
It's definitely one of those things. So if we can't rely on human beings for everything to work out the way it's supposed to, absolutely not.
No.
I mean, just based on the first part of her story, absolutely not.
Right?
Like,
no, agreed.
Absolutely not. There has to be somebody else in charge that we can put our faith in, we can trust in, and we can lean on when things are going, like even when we are having a struggle or a hard time, or like you said, for those 2 years, that there's no way that was easy. There was no way, but like it was perfectly done how everything needed to be done, just like you said. And
So true.
I don't understand how anybody cannot believe. Like
No,
it always like I'm never going to look at somebody and be like, oh, you're a terrible person because you don't believe in God. But like, how can you meet people like Deni and hear their story and not believe?
Exactly.
Like, how can you not? I don't get it.
No, I'm with you. 100% with you on that. Like that's just, I
I feel the same way. Like I can't look at any of my kids' faces and like, no, like none of them just popped up here. None of them were just oh wow, maybe I'm pregnant situation. Like they were all very much. I tell them all they're very expensive. Like y'all were very expensive to get here.
Yes.
And so like, and just seeing their faces, like every single one of them, whenever we went and met my son, they like wheeled him in and like handed him to me, and I was like, all right, like I love him. Like how do you hand me this child that I've never seen before, I've never met before, I know really nothing about? And I was like, but I like love you. Like I would take a bullet for you right now. And it was so wonderful. And I tell you, this is like his favorite story. As we were in the hospital, we were like there all day with him, and we're hanging out in the hospital. My husband's like so ADD, so he's like, I'm gonna go to snack, like men. And they're like, well, and so I was like, go do something. And so I'm like holding him, and he's like here, and I'm holding him, and I'm looking at him, and and he like wakes up and he looks at me. And it was just the weirdest, there's no other explanation but God. But he looked at me and I looked at him and I was like, I love you. And he looked at me and it was like, at first he was like, who are you? And then he looked at me and he was like, oh. And then like, he just like closed his eyes and like moved his little body up and just like nuzzled me right here. And I was like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. Like 1000%. This is it. This is it.
I love that
so much.
And he wanted an adopted sibling. So that was really awesome too, to get to do
for him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we brought her home from the hospital, I texted a picture of him and her to his birth mother. And she was like, oh my gosh, like that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. This is so great. And she was like, that poor girl is never going to be able to date because the next picture I sent was of both boys with her. And she was like, oh my gosh, bless her heart.
That's awesome. I love that so much. Yeah. Oh, brothers, man. That's great though. That's so much fun. I love it. Delancey, do you have any other questions? I can't think of any. besides the few that I wrote down.
I mean, she's really answered all the ones that I had, but I do know that I'm gonna need her to pin some time after like they get back.
Yes.
So that we can have an update episode, because I want to know how that goes.
Yes, we want you to
I'm
come
just
back
saying,
for sure.
Yes, we definitely want you to come back on here and tell your story. And it's amazing to me how, and this isn't really like a question, it's more like a statement. It's amazing to me how Melanie and I've talked about this, like how over the last year, this has just done so much for us as far as like being able to talk through things and share information and just be able to share the light and the positive. And then so I think it's something very special to have you come on here.
Agreed.
Because you have been very proactive with letting us know like, hey, I'm here because I follow Raquel, and then I came here, and then like you've been very intentional with listening and even talking us through some things too, and like explaining some information to us. So having you not just as a listener but like as a resource is just something so special, and it just kind of comes full circle, the reason why we started doing this. Like it's just great. It's wonderful to be able to include you in this journey with us, not just in messages but like having you as a part of this. So thank you for doing this with us.
Yes.
I appreciate it, and I hope that like that's my hope, that I can help other people and answer questions, and I don't know, just make this a better space for everybody.
No, agreed. And I mean, I love it so much. Okay, so the final thing.
Doing anything perfectly, I assure you.
Shoot, as I freeze.
Did she freeze?
Am I good? Okay. Am I good? Am I good? Oh,
okay, you're back.
Internet.
Okay, you're unfrozen now. Go for it.
I was gonna say the last thing that I always ask everybody, which you probably noticed if you listen to our episodes when we have guests come on, is just like, what advice, which you've already given some really good nuggets. I can already think of some that you've pointed out when you have people like ask you about adoption. But what advice would you have for, let's be more specific, adoptive parents? Like what's a piece of advice you'd give people?
Be open. Be open, because there's no way to know what your story is going to be or how it's going to play out. You can have like all these ideas in your head of what you think and what you want and how it's going to look and all of those things. But the story that God writes is always better. Oh. So be open to what he has for you.
I love that. That's the quote.
That was amazing. No, that was amazing. That was so good. Story that God's written. Oh my gosh. Yes. Perfect. I love that. No, I seriously do. That was beautiful how it ended. So yeah.
Y'all's enthusiasm makes this really fun.
That's what we're here for. No, I seriously I love that. I love how that ended, because it's so true. And the people that obviously listen to us, the majority, they all believe that God is an adoption. We don't really, not that I know of, have any of those people that don't. So I love that. Like it literally gave me chills when you said that, because I just think it's so amazing. It's so beautiful. And I know me and Delancey can both, for our own stories, say that. So anyway,
100%.
All right. Any other words of wisdom, guys, before we end this? No? Okay. If you're not watching YouTube, you can see their faces. Well, thank you so much, Deni, for coming on. We seriously appreciate it. Like, so happy that you did. Thank you for supporting us. Like, I'll just reiterate everything that Delancey said. Like, seriously, it means the world to us if we can make a difference with one person. And look, now in turn, like Delancey said, you're here with us, which I think is so amazing. So thank you. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.